They were never supposed to be discovered. Two pups, barely 5 months old, lay buried up to their necks beneath the frozen crust of Pine Hollow's soil. Their tiny bodies quivered, their muffled cries smothered by earth packed too tightly for air to pass easily. The night wind carried the faintest tremor of their distress, soft enough to be drowned by rustling branches, faint enough to vanish if a person blinked. But 3 men heard it. Not angels, not search teams, 3 Marines, worn thin by war and wandering back toward camp with exhaustion on their backs. Something in the air tugged at them, something no one else would have noticed. And what they uncovered in that dim Wyoming night would alter every life it touched. This wasn't a simple rescue. It was a rebirth, a story carved from betrayal, scraped raw from fear, and held together by the kind of devotion only dogs know how to give. Before the story began, the autumn season had just settled into Pine Hollow, Wyoming. The air held that crisp, dry bite that clings to your breath and hangs in front of your face like a small ghost. The sky stretched in a dull slate-gray sheet, thick clouds crouched low as though listening closely to the earth beneath them. A breeze threaded itself through the long pines, shaking the gold-tipped grasses sprawling over the distant hills near the Camden property, an estate perched between sun-hardened ridges and the sharp silhouettes of the Big Horn Mountains. Dwight Camden, 54 years old, stood on the back field of his estate with a short-handled spade in his gloved hand. He was a tall man, carved from ambition, wrapped in a reputation of polished success. His silver hair was slicked meticulously away from his forehead, his hazel eyes sharp and rarely blinking, and even his casual clothes, dark blue utility jacket, crisp jeans, leather gloves, looked curated. Dwight had once been Pine Hollow's beloved benefactor, a donor to the local shelter, a man who proudly adopted strays. But that was before his wife Caroline died on a hiking trail 3 years earlier, an accident that hollowed him out and twisted his grief into something colder. The man who once cradled stray puppies on his porch had vanished, replaced by someone rigid, withdrawn, and desperate for control. And then Sarah arrived. Sarah Camden, 33, Dwight's second wife, was tall, slender, and elegant with a posture so straight it looked painful. Her long black hair was always pulled tight, and her expression was carved in unmoving calm. Raised by a strict military father in Arizona, she grew up in a household where emotion was considered tactical weakness and unpredictability was punished swiftly. She preferred silence, precision, order. And above all, she despised chaos. To Sarah, puppies were chaos. Hazel and Scout, German Shepherd siblings, were living reminders of the life Dwight had before her. Hazel, small and sable-coated with ears that flopped when she ran, was clingy and vocal. Scout, slightly larger with dark saddle markings, was bold and inquisitive, always the first to bark, the first to test boundaries, the first to nuzzle for affection. The pups had been gifts from Dwight's daughter from his first marriage, a daughter Sarah had quietly ensured never returned to the estate. Now, in the far corner of the field, Dwight stared down at the 2 shallow holes he had dug. They were just deep enough for a young pup to sit in with its legs folded. The ground was softer there, hidden from the house, sheltered by pines, and out of view. Hazel sniffed curiously at the soil, tail swaying. Scout barked once, uncertain. Dwight crouched and rubbed Scout's neck. "It's just a game," he murmured, though the word sounded like he was trying to convince himself. He worked quickly. He lifted each pup into its hole. They didn't resist, only squirmed in mild confusion, tiny paws shifting uncertainly. Dwight began pushing handfuls of soil back into the holes. Hazel whimpered, a small, fragile sound. He froze, jaw clenching, then continued scooping. "She'll be happy," he whispered under his breath. "No more barking. No more mess. No more fights." Hazel pawed weakly at the dirt as it reached her chest. Scout let out a low growl, fear sharpening his eyes. Dwight didn't stop. When he finished, both pups were immobilized, buried up to their necks. Their little heads stuck out of the earth like trembling flowers, their whimpers muffled. Dwight rose, breathing hard. He wouldn't look at them. She'll believe they ran off, he said louder, as if justifying the story to the night itself. The gate was open, that's all. But the night did not answer. Instead, tires crackled faintly over gravel on the ridge. 3 Marines, Travis Langdon, Cole Maddox, and Javi Herrera, were making their way down the slope, backpacks slung lazily over their shoulders. Their jeep had broken down miles north, forcing them to walk back toward Camp Ridgeline. Travis, 29, broad-shouldered with a blonde buzzcut, grew up around dogs and engines in a forgotten Texas town. He missed nothing, every twitch of grass, every sound carried on wind. Cole, 31, tall and quiet, with soft southern speech and memories he never spoke aloud, carried scars far deeper than skin. Javi, 27, wiry and quick with a joke, proudly wore tattoos honoring his mother and his first rescue dog. As they neared the tree line, Travis froze. "You hear that?" Cole paused. "Something's whining." Javi frowned. "No wind makes that sound." They stepped through the underbrush, and the field opened below. 2 tiny heads protruded from disturbed mounds of soil. Dwight walked away from them, spade in hand, unaware he was being watched. "What the hell?" Travis whispered. The moonlight slid across the field, casting trembling shadows over the pups' faces. Their eyes glistened, terrified, pleading. And the Marines moved. The air over Pine Hollow hung unnaturally still, as though the night itself was holding its breath. Clouds that once smothered the sky had thinned into silver streaks, letting strips of moonlight spill across the grass and treetops. The breeze murmured softly through the pines, carrying something frail, fleeting, a sound too faint to be called a bark. But Travis heard it again. He stopped mid-stride, lifted a hand, and Cole and Javi halted instantly behind him. The 3 Marines stood motionless, listening to the trembling hush around them. There, another sound. Not quite a cry. Not quite a whimper. More like a desperate breath slipping through packed soil. Travis angled his head, eyes narrowing. He had a way of hearing things others filtered out, an instinct shaped by loss, trauma, and the stray dog he'd once saved as a boy. Copper, the mutt he carried home from behind a gas station dumpster when he was 8. Copper had slept at his feet for years, his first taste of unconditional loyalty. Travis had lost people. He'd lost battles. But he'd never forgotten the sound of fear in a helpless animal's throat. And tonight, that memory clawed its way through the wind. "You guys hear that?" he murmured. Javi nodded slowly. "Yeah, something's alive down there." Cole's jaw tightened. "Small. Hurt. Close." Without another word, they descended the slope, quiet, fast, boots rustling through brittle pine needles. As they stepped past the last line of trees, the field unfurled before them like a dimly lit stage. That's when Travis saw them. 2 mounds, barely noticeable. Unnaturally shaped. "Wrong. There," he whispered, pointing. The closer they came, the more the silence around them trembled, like the ground itself was afraid. Then one of the mounds shifted. A raw, scraping sound clawed through the night. Travis dropped to his knees. 2 tiny German shepherd heads poked helplessly from the earth, eyes glazed with fear. Their fur was matted with dirt and bits of pine. The soil pressed against their necks like a vice, chests tight, breaths short and shallow. Hazel's delicate whimpers hit the air in trembling fits. Her eyes flickered desperately as Travis leaned closer. Scout's gaze burned with something sharper, fear mixed with the faintest spark of defiance. Javi exhaled, stunned. "No way, who would do this?" Cole didn't speak. He stood stock still, fists clenched, his breathing sharp with anger he didn't bother hiding. "This wasn't an accident," Travis whispered. He placed his gloved hand near Scout's muzzle. The pup let out a rattled lick, weak but trusting. "That's it," Travis said, voice steady with purpose. "We're getting them out." Javi flicked on his flashlight, angling the beam carefully. No sudden light. Don't spook them. Cole scanned the perimeter. His hand rested near his sidearm. Whoever did this couldn't be far. Travis didn't care. He'd already begun digging, bare hands clawing at the packed soil around Scout's chest. Come on, help me, he ordered. The three Marines moved with silent unity, trained instincts melding into a single force. Travis dug on Scout's right side, Javi mirrored him on Hazel's, whispering soft comfort in Spanish. Cole circled, scanning shadows, tension rolling off him in waves. They're so small, Javi muttered. 4 or 5 months, Travis replied. Maybe 6. Hazel whimpered as the pressure eased. Her paw twitched involuntarily. Easy, girl. We've got you, Travis murmured. After several long minutes of frantic but careful digging, both pups had enough space for the men to lift them out. Javi scooped Hazel into his arms like a fragile newborn, her breath shallow but steady. Travis lifted Scout, who trembled violently before pressing his face into Travis's chest as though instinctively recognizing safety. For a moment, all three Marines stood still beneath the moonlight, holding 2 tiny lives in hands meant for battle. Cole finally spoke, voice taut with fury. Someone buried them alive. That's evil. Javi nodded, jaw tight. We find out who. Travis cradled Scout close. First we get them warm. They carried the pups back to their makeshift jeep camp, a battered vehicle propped under a tarp, surrounded by their gear. Javi spread out his sleeping bag and wrapped Hazel carefully, tucking his coat around her small frame. Travis did the same for Scout. Cole sparked a fire with practiced ease, feeding it small twigs until a warm glow flickered against the darkness. Hazel's breath steadied. Scout curled instinctively toward her. Travis dug through his rucksack and pulled out a tarnished silver medallion, a St. Francis token he'd held since he was 15. He placed it beside Scout's blanket. You're safe now, he whispered. Not on my watch. The fire crackled softly, casting warm light over the tiny bodies. But something wasn't right. Hazel tried to shift and cried out. A sharp, pained yelp. Javi snapped upright. Bro, her leg. Something's wrong. Travis peeled back the blanket, running his hand along Hazel's side. When he touched her back hip, she flinched violently. She's still trapped, he said. We didn't clear the back leg. Javi cursed under his breath. Grab your knives. We're going back. Minutes later, they were sprinting across the field again, flashlights slicing through the darkness. The soil had hardened with the night's chill, crunching beneath their boots. Hazel's half-collapsed hole still gaped in the ground. Travis dropped to his knees and began carving into the soil with his K-bar, working furiously. Javi mirrored him, trench knife in hand. Something's pinning the leg, Javi grunted. Root or rock? Cole hovered behind them, breathing tight. His hands trembled. His face paled. You all right? Travis asked without looking up. Cole didn't answer. His mind had traveled elsewhere, back to the avalanche in Kandahar. Back to snow crushing his chest. Back to the silence of being buried alive for 43 minutes. I can't get close to the dirt, he muttered, stepping back. Javi looked up. Hey, it's not you in there. It's her. Stay with us. Cole paced, shaking, trying to breathe. Travis didn't push. He understood private hells. Javi, we need leverage. Can't dig around this. Javi scanned the area, then sprinted toward the jeep. Minutes later he returned carrying the small wooden ramp they'd used earlier, a rough, splintered board, 4 feet long. This'll work. Together, the 3 Marines wedged the ramp beneath the hardened soil. Their hands braced, muscles tense. 1 count, Travis said. They pushed. The ground groaned. Hazel cried out. And then, her leg jerked free. Travis scooped her up immediately, holding her close as she whimpered in his arms. "I've got you," he whispered, to Hazel, but also to Copper, to the memory of what he'd lost and the promise he refused to break again. Back at the campfire, they examined her leg. Swollen, tender, but no open wounds. "She'll heal," Cole said finally, voice steadier now. Scout crawled toward Hazel, nudging her side protectively. The two pups curled together, breathing in sync, tiny survivors clinging to warmth. Around them, the fire hissed softly. "Tomorrow," Travis vowed. "We find out who did this, and why." Dawn crept slowly over Pine Hollow, brushing the horizon with streaks of lavender and faint gold. The mountain ridge caught the light first, silhouetting the jagged peaks before the glow spilled across the forest and finally reached the Marines' camp. The fire from the night before had dwindled into soft orange coals, crackling faintly beneath the morning chill. But the tent remained warm, its canvas holding in the breath of 3 men and 2 recovering pups. Inside, Scout and Hazel stirred beneath wool blankets. The dirt still clung to their fur, dried into tiny patches, and both bodies trembled with leftover exhaustion. But they were alive. Their breaths were steadying. And they no longer shook from the cold. Travis sat just outside the tent flap, sipping lukewarm coffee from a dented tin mug. His eyes were fixed on the sunrise, but his thoughts were anchored firmly inside the tent. He had slept little, if at all. Every time Hazel shifted, he'd listened. Every time Scout breathed sharply in his sleep, he'd checked. Hazel's leg had swollen overnight, angry and tender, but she had enough strength to lift her head and track movement with her alert amber eyes. Scout had barely left her side, pressing against her the entire night, licking her face whenever she whimpered. Inside, Javi was sprawled on his sleeping mat, one arm extended toward Hazel without even realizing it, his hand hovering protectively near her back. Cole was awake, too, kneeling beside the med kit, meticulously cleaning the few used tools with slow, deliberate movements. "You sleep?" Travis asked quietly. "Barely," Cole muttered. "Every time I shut my eyes, I kept picturing dirt falling, slow, grain by grain." He didn't look up. "You?" Travis shook his head. "Didn't feel like closing my eyes." Javi sat up, hair a wild mess, voice rough. "Did I hallucinate last night? Or did we actually rescue 2 pups from a psychopath's backyard burial?" "We didn't imagine it," Travis replied. "And this isn't over." Javi yawned, stretching until his back cracked. "Speaking of not over, we still don't know who buried them." "I found something," Travis said, pulling 2 collars from his jacket pocket. He handed one to Javi and one to Cole. The collars were worn leather, smeared with dirt but legible. Each had a polished brass tag. Camden Estate. Just the name. No number. Cole whistled under his breath. "That's Dwight Camden, big landowner, retired CEO, town money. Keeps to himself. Locals say folks don't exactly love him," Javi added. "Always has outsiders do his work. Weird reputation. And didn't he just marry someone who hates dogs?" Cole asked. "Sarah Camden," Travis said. He had seen her once, tall, pale, disciplined. A presence like carved stone. Quiet but sharp. Rumors swirled about her. Raised by a hardened colonel. A childhood shaped by strict order, silence, and consequences. A mother who left early in her life and never returned. Sarah had grown into someone who survived by eliminating unpredictability. To her, dogs weren't companions, they were noise. "I think we know why someone wanted these pups gone," Travis muttered. "Call the sheriff?" Cole asked, reaching for the satellite phone. He dialed. But before the call connected, a sound rumbled faintly from the dirt road, a smooth, low hum. Not the sound of a ranch truck. Not a town vehicle. Something newer. Wealthier. Javi leaned around a pine tree. Silver Mercedes. Fresh model. Travis stood, posture stiffening. That's not coincidence. The SUV approached slowly, rolling to a stop 30 yards away. The door opened, and Dwight Camden stepped out. He looked exactly like the man Pine Hollow whispered about, tall, manicured, adorned in money. His salt and pepper hair was trimmed to precision, his navy pea coat spotless. Not a speck of dust on him despite the dirt roads. He approached with a polished smile, the practiced kind. "Morning, gentlemen," Dwight called, tone warm but empty. "Heard a campfire was burning last night. Wanted to check if anyone needed help." His eyes flicked briefly toward the tent behind them. He hadn't seen the pups. But something in his gaze said he didn't need to. Travis stepped forward, blocking the tent. "You missing anything, Mr. Camden?" he asked calmly. Dwight's smile tightened a fraction. "Actually, yes. 2 young German Shepherd pups. Slipped out the gate last night. My wife and I were devastated." Javi folded his arms, face blank but eyes hard. "That so?" A flicker, a crack, passed over Dwight's eyes before smoothing away. Cole held up the collar. "This belonged to you?" Dwight took it, glanced at it, and nodded with a faint, practiced sigh. "Yes. Scout. And his sister Hazel. We searched all night. They didn't escape," Travis said, tone low. Dwight's jaw moved slightly. "Pardon?" "They were buried," Travis continued. "Alive." Dwight froze, not visibly, but something behind his eyes snapped quietly. "That's a very serious accusation," he said with a slow exhale. "You should be careful making claims like that." Cole lifted the satellite phone. "We can make it official if you'd like." Dwight raised both palms slightly. Now. No need to escalate. Could have been teenagers. Or some sick prank. "No kids bury dogs with your collars on them," Javi said. Another flash of irritation crossed Dwight's face, a tightening around the mouth, before the polished veneer returned. "You found them," he said smoothly. "I appreciate that. I'll take them back now." "You won't," Travis replied. Dwight's tone dropped an octave. "Do you have proof of wrongdoing?" Travis didn't blink. "We don't need you to admit anything." For the first time, Dwight's false charm cracked. His expression hardened like cooling steel. Without another word, he turned sharply, walked back to the Mercedes, and drove off fast, gravel spraying from the tires in a sharp hiss. The Marines watched the dust settle. "Yeah," Javi muttered. "That guy's guilty as sin." "He'll be back," Cole added. "Men like him never lose quietly." Travis didn't answer. But he knew, Dwight Camden wasn't retreating. He was recalibrating. And whatever he came back to take wouldn't be an apology. His next move would be darker. More calculated. More dangerous. And the Marines needed to be ready. The morning sun climbed steadily over Pine Hollow, brightening the tips of the pine trees and washing the campsite in a pale gold glow. But despite the light, a cold unease clung to the air. It lingered like the smoke from last night's fire, thin, bitter, and impossible to ignore. Travis stood near the dying embers, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the dirt road where Dwight Camden's Mercedes had disappeared minutes earlier. His instincts, honed in combat zones and sharpened by years of reading danger before it struck, were screaming. Dwight wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Inside the tent, the 2 pups remained curled together beneath their blankets. Scout pressed protectively against Hazel, who still favored her injured leg. Her swelling hadn't worsened, but it hadn't improved either. When Travis checked on her, she lifted her head, eyes bright but worried. She trusted him, he could see that. But the uncertainty of what waited outside the tent still haunted her gaze. Javi sat nearby, methodically sharpening a folding blade against a stone. The rhythmic scrape of metal on rough grit echoed softly through the clearing, steady, careful, purposeful. His usually joking demeanor had disappeared, replaced with a determined silence. Cole knelt beside the satellite phone, thumbs tapping as he typed a message to the sheriff's department. There was barely any signal, so they relied on slow, text-based transmissions. But that was enough. They sent coordinates, images, details, everything necessary to raise alarm and force the law into motion. He hit send. The small icon spun. Success. "He'll come back," Travis said quietly. Cole didn't look up. "Of course he will. Guys like him don't walk away knowing someone has proof." Javi sheathed his knife. "Then why wait for him? Let's beat him to the punch. Go to his land. Document everything." Travis nodded. "We move now. No confrontation. But we gather evidence he can't erase." They packed light, water, phones, cameras, a notebook, and Travis's pocket medallion nestled back into his jacket for safekeeping. Before they left, Travis knelt by Hazel and Scout. "You two stay put," he whispered gently. "We'll be back." Hazel blinked slowly, her ears twitching. Scout pressed his nose against Travis's wrist as if giving silent approval. The Marines slipped through the forest edge, traveling along a narrow tree line that hugged the southern border of Camden's sprawling property. The ground softened beneath their boots as they approached the field where the pups had been buried. The sun had dried the soil, but the scars remained. 2 shallow depressions. Uneven shovel marks. Boot prints not yet carried away by wind. Cole crouched near the disturbed earth, brushing his fingers across the rim of the indentations. "Still damp underneath," he said. "He buried them less than a day ago." Javi crouched with the GoPro. "Wide shot first," he said. "Then slow pan." He positioned the camera on a flat rock, adjusting the angle until the shadows stretched just right. Then he hit record. Travis moved methodically around the site, photographing every mark. He paused when he found faint tracks, lighter, slimmer shoe prints. "Someone else was here," he said. "Smaller feet. Not Dwight." Javi frowned. "House staff." Cole nodded. "Or someone watching." They followed the small tracks around a ridge, weaving between rocks until Javi stopped abruptly. Guys?" Travis and Cole joined him. Embedded between 3 large stones was a makeshift burn pit. Inside it lay the charred remnants of a paper sack, melted plastic, and partially burned packaging from veterinary supplies. Travis poked the ash with a stick. "Someone tried to destroy evidence," he said. "Or hide a mistake," Cole added, snapping photos. Javi retrieved a small, unburned scrap, a torn piece of pet prescription labels. He dropped it into a Ziploc bag. They were packing up when a faint mechanical hum drifted across the property. Not a car. Not a truck. A generator. Or maybe heavy lawn equipment. But Travis didn't buy it. He stiffened instantly. "Let's move. Now." They backtracked, weaving through the pines until they reached the campground again. That's when they froze. The tent flap hung open. Travis sprinted ahead. Hazel and Scout remained inside, frightened but unharmed. They whimpered as he knelt and checked them both. "They're okay," he breathed out. Cole examined the surrounding ground. "Someone searched our stuff." Javi scanned the area, eyes darting to the broken pattern in the pine needles. Different vehicle this time. Not the Mercedes. Travis rose slowly, every muscle in his body tightening. Something felt wrong, personal. Targeted. Then Cole spoke. "Travis, your medallion." Travis patted his jacket instinctively. "Gone." The St. Francis medallion he'd left by Scout the night before, the one he always carried, was missing. It didn't fall. It didn't get lost. It was taken. Javi's expression darkened. He walked right into our camp. Didn't take food. Didn't take equipment. Just the medallion. Cole's voice dropped. That was a message. Travis clenched the empty space where the medallion should have been. We escalate back, Javi said. We go to the house. Talk to her. Sarah Camden. She was the unknown variable. Everything around Dwight was rehearsed, polished, calculated. But Sarah? She was a locked room, silent and unreadable. They didn't know what she believed, what she tolerated, or what she secretly feared. But they needed answers. Desperately. The walkway to the Camden estate felt unnaturally quiet, the air still and heavy as the three Marines approached the back gate. The towering White House loomed ahead, all pristine lines and cold elegance. Travis rang the doorbell. Nothing. Javi knocked. Silence. Cole checked the side gate. Unlocked. They moved silently around to the rear patio and peered through the kitchen window. Sarah Camden stood alone in the center of the living room, barefoot on marble tiles, wrapped in a long cream sweater. She looked frozen, not in shock but in deep calculation. Her posture was immaculate. Her face unreadable. But her eyes had a storm in them. Travis raised a hand. She hesitated, then slowly slid open the glass door. The air inside smelled sterile, like a place where joy had never lingered long. Travis spoke first. Mrs. Camden, we found your dogs. Someone buried them. A long breath slipped from her lips, soft, restrained. Then she whispered, come in. They entered cautiously. The house felt untouched by life, no photos, no clutter, no warmth. I didn't know, Sarah said quietly. Dwight told me he'd given them away. Said they were too much trouble. That one bit the gardener. Did you believe him? Travis asked. I tried to. Her voice broke only the tiniest bit. Javi stepped closer. Did you see him this morning? She nodded. He said he was leaving for a trip. But, he wasn't traveling. He was running. He took files. Clothes. Passports. Cole exchanged a glance with Travis. He'll come back, Sarah said, her voice low and clear. But he won't come for luggage. Travis swallowed the heat rising in his chest. Then we need to move fast. I'll help you, she said. Dwight has done terrible things. And I won't protect him anymore. Her voice didn't tremble. It didn't waver. For the first time since they'd met her. Sarah Camden looked free. Afternoon light settled over Pine Hollow like a soft veil, hazy and amber, drifting through the tall windows of the Camden estate. Outside, the wind moved lazily across the fields, brushing over dry grass and stirring flecks of dust into the warm air. But inside the house, the atmosphere had shifted sharply. The elegant quiet that usually filled the estate was gone. Something heavier sat in the rooms now, truth, fear, and the sense that a carefully constructed world had begun to crack. Travis and Cole stood at the entrance to the living room, their boots planted firmly on the polished marble floors. Their posture straight. Their eyes alert. They looked like men braced for a storm. Sarah Camden sat rigidly on the edge of a velvet-backed chair. Her fingers wrapped around her elbows as if trying to hold herself together. Her face, pale and composed, held a determination they hadn't seen from her before. She had spent years in silence, years agreeing with Dwight's rules, years burying her own voice. But that silence had ended the moment she said, "I'll help you." From the hallway came the sound of soft footsteps. A woman stepped into view, dressed simply in khakis and a navy sweater, her dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, as though she expected to be overlooked or reprimanded at any moment. This was Melanie Harper, Dwight's long-serving house assistant. In her mid-30s, Melanie had once been a math teacher in Cheyenne, until a bitter divorce left her without a home or savings. Dwight hired her 3 years ago, offering a stable job and room on the property's west wing. She was quiet, diligent, and invisible, exactly the kind of person Dwight preferred to keep near. Melanie's eyes flicked nervously to each Marine before settling on Sarah. "Mrs. Camden said you needed to talk to me," she murmured. About the dogs." Her voice wavered, but not from guilt. From fear. Travis stepped forward, his tone steady. Melanie's eyes flicked nervously to each Marine before settling on Sarah. "Mrs. Camden said you needed to talk to me," she murmured. About the dogs." Her voice wavered, but not from guilt. From fear. Travis stepped forward, his tone steady. "We found Scout and Hazel buried alive near your south fence. We believe Dwight put them there." Melanie swallowed hard. Her hands tightened around her wrist as if it were a lifeline. "I suspected," she whispered. "I didn't want to believe it, but I saw things." Javi entered from a side door, brushing pine needles from his sleeves, joining the others. His usual grin was gone. "Tell us exactly what you saw," he said gently. "Take your time. Everything matters." Melanie hesitated. She glanced at Sarah again, who gave her a silent nod. Then Melanie began, voice trembling, breath shallow. "I was doing laundry yesterday morning. Around 6:30. The garage door opened. Mr. Camden never leaves that early. I peeked through the side window." She paused, eyes glistening. "He had the puppies on leashes, dragging them toward the truck. They weren't barking, they were shaking. One kept sitting down, and he kicked it." Javi's jaw clenched as a dark look flashed in his eyes. Melanie continued, her voice cracking. "He threw them in a crate. Drove toward the east field. I didn't say anything because he always told me that if I questioned him, I'd end up like the stray dogs out back. I thought it was just his way of scaring me." Cole stepped forward, expression soft but serious. "Why tell us now?" Melanie looked away, shame filling her gaze. Sarah rose from her chair, placing a gentle hand on Melanie's shoulder. "Show them," she said. Melanie reached into her back pocket with trembling fingers and pulled out a tiny plastic bag. Inside was a micro SD card. "It's from the security system," she said. Dwight had trail cameras installed on the south fence. He thought they only backed up to the cloud. But I changed the settings. It stores to both now." Javi accepted the bag carefully. "You watched the footage?" Melanie nodded, tears finally spilling. "Yes. It shows him, digging. Placing them in the holes. Covering them. Like he was planting flowers. Like it was nothing." The room fell silent. A silence that felt violent. Sarah closed her eyes as if bracing against a memory. "I told her to show you," she said, voice soft but steady. "Dwight has lied to me too. I'm done enabling him." Travis inhaled deeply, steadying himself. "Javi, copy the card. Get it to Sheriff Denning. Fast." Javi already had his phone out, connecting a card reader. Within seconds, the footage loaded, dim, grainy, but unmistakable. On the screen, Dwight Camden stood over two small holes, shovel in hand, his expression cold and empty as he buried Hazel and Scout. Watching the recording felt like the air had been punctured. No one spoke. Not a sound moved in the room but the faint hum of the refrigerator. Cole's hands curled into fists. "That's more than enough to arrest him." Javi sealed the card into its bag. "I'm taking this to Denning right now." Melanie stepped forward. "I'm coming with you. I'll give a full statement." I'm done hiding. Javi nodded once. Grab a coat. As they stepped out the door, Sarah turned toward Travis, her voice barely above a whisper, but firm. You know he'll try to twist this. He'll blame me. Or Melanie. Or you. We're not afraid of men like Dwight, Travis answered. Cole moved to the window, scanning the driveway. Be ready, he muttered. He's coming back for something. Sarah's expression darkened. And this time. She believed him. The sky over Pine Hollow had never looked so deceptively peaceful. By mid-morning, the sun gleamed like polished brass above the rolling hills, warming the roofs of barns and brushing the tops of the pines with gold. A soft wind carried the scent of freshly cut hay from the surrounding farms. On any other day, it would have been a postcard scene of rural calm. But today, Pine Hollow vibrated with tension. What had happened on the Camden estate was no longer a secret. And now justice was on its way, sirens silent, lights off, but authority heavy in the engines of 2 incoming patrol cars. Sheriff Raymond Denning stood outside the modest sheriff's office, arms crossed over his broad chest, the faint lines at the corners of his eyes carved by decades of keeping order. In his early 60s, with the build of a man who once carried a pack through war zones, Ray had served as Pine Hollow's lawman for over 20 years. People trusted him, respected him, and feared disappointing him. When Javi placed the SD card in his hand and Ray watched the footage, he didn't curse, didn't shout, didn't express disbelief. He only said 2 words. Get him. Now, the sheriff sat behind the wheel of the lead cruiser as they eased down the quiet drive toward the Camden estate. Gravel crunched beneath the tires in slow, purposeful rhythm. Every rotation of the wheels carried the weight of law, proof, and the undeniable truth of what Dwight Camden had done. On the porch, Travis and Cole waited, flanking Sarah like silent guardians. Their faces had hardened into soldier stillness, but the clench in their jaws betrayed anticipation. Scout and Hazel sat beneath the porch steps, wrapped in blankets, peeking out with wide, uncertain eyes. Scout's tail flicked cautiously when he saw Travis. Hazel pressed close to her brother, her injured leg curled gently beneath her. The pups sensed the tension. They felt the storm building. Inside the house, Dwight Camden was in his study. He stood over an open suitcase, neatly folded shirts arranged like soldiers in formation. His laptop screen glowed with a flight confirmation, one way to Denver. A plane leaving in 2 hours. The cursor blinked over the "Complete Purchase" button. He reached for the power cord just as the front door swung open. Ray Denning filled the doorway, his badge catching the sunlight. Mr. Camden, Ray said, voice level, steady. We need to talk. Dwight turned slowly, smile already plastered on like a mask. Sheriff. What a surprise. Is something wrong? Ray didn't blink. Dwight Camden, you are under arrest for felony animal cruelty and obstruction of justice. Step outside. A crack ran through Dwight's facade. He laughed once, sharp, dismissive. This is absurd. You're making a mistake. Someone is lying to you. Ray stepped closer. Hands visible, Dwight. Dwight's eyes flicked toward Sarah as she approached behind the sheriff. For a moment, his smile twisted into something venomous. Sarah, he said, voice low. What did you tell them? Sarah didn't flinch. I told the truth. That single sentence broke whatever composure Dwight had left. You ungrateful, he began, but Ray cut him off. Enough. Turn around. When the handcuffs closed around Dwight's wrists, the sound echoed like finality. He was escorted out the front door, his polished shoes scraping the wood as he stumbled. On the porch, Travis watched with arms folded, expression unreadable. Cole stood beside him, jaw clenched. Scout barked, a single, sharp sound. Dwight's head jerked toward the pups. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. By late afternoon, Pine Hollow was buzzing. News traveled faster than wildfire in small towns. At the diner, at the feed store, at the post office, every whispered conversation carried the same shock. Did you hear? Camden's in jail. They found the pups buried alive. 3 Marines saved them. Grief, anger, and awe spread through the community. Meanwhile, Hazel and Scout were taken to Dr. Lorraine Beckett, the town's only veterinarian. At 48, with curly salt and pepper hair and a reputation for blunt honesty, Dr. Beckett wasted no time. She examined Hazel's leg, wrapped it gently in a compression bandage, and gave both pups warm formula and clean water. "They're fighters," she said to Travis later. "They'll recover. But they need stability now. A real home." Back at the sheriff's office, Javi, Sarah, and Melanie waited as the evidence was logged. Melanie gave a full statement, clear, brave, unwavering. She wore the same navy sweater, but her posture was different now, straighter, grounded. Pine Hollow's prosecutor, Carolyn Knox, reviewed the footage on a small monitor. Early 50s, bespectacled, calm and methodical, she specialized in cases people didn't think mattered: animal neglect, exploited seniors, abandoned kids. But everyone in town knew her reputation. Quiet voice. Sharp mind. Iron heart. She watched Dwight's actions without blinking. When the video ended, she exhaled. "We're taking this public," she said. The preliminary hearing was held in the old county courthouse, its wooden benches worn smooth by decades of trials and town meetings. Locals filled the back rows, whispering behind cupped hands. A few news vans from Casper and Cheyenne parked outside, cameras ready. Travis, Cole, and Javi stood side by side near the front. Sarah sat with Melanie, the 2 women a picture of quiet solidarity. Dwight entered wearing a borrowed suit from County Holding, wrinkled, mismatched, ill-fitting. His hair was no longer sleek. His confidence evaporated. His attorney, Alan Reese, a slick-talking Jackson Hole lawyer with an exaggerated smile, muttered reassurances in his ear. But reassurance couldn't save him when the footage began playing. The courtroom went silent. There it was, Dwight, burying Hazel and Scout. Expression emotionless. Actions calculated. A wave of disgust swept through the spectators. When Melanie took the stand, she didn't tremble. She described everything she'd seen, everything she feared, everything she regretted not reporting sooner. Her voice carried through the room like a quiet anthem. In the final minutes, Judge Emily Harrow, silver-haired, razor-voiced, respected across 3 counties, made her ruling. "This case will proceed to trial. Bail is denied." Reese sputtered objections. They dissolved in the air like dust. Then the judge addressed the matter of the dogs. With consent from all necessary parties, she said firmly, "Scout and Hazel will be permanently removed from Mr. Camden's custody." "Is there a proposed placement?" Carolyn Knox smiled faintly. "Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Beckett will foster them initially, and long-term custody is requested by Marines Langdon, Herrera, and Maddox." A ripple of approval moved through the room. Scout barked from the hallway, perfect timing. Judge Harrow struck her gavel. "Let it be entered into the record. Effective immediately, custody is awarded to the Marines." And with that, the pup's future shifted forever. The next few days in Pine Hollow unfolded like a mixture of healing and reckoning, quiet on the surface, but thick with the aftershocks of everything that had happened. Hazel and Scout settled into temporary care at Dr. Beckett's clinic, where warmth and routine began stitching their spirits back together. The pups slept long hours, waking for meals, care, and the occasional burst of curious energy. Hazel's leg wrapped snugly in its fresh bandage no longer throbbed the way it had before, and Scout, ever watchful, stayed glued to her side. But the Marines continued to visit every morning and every evening. And the pups recognized the sound of their footsteps before the door even opened. Travis knelt on the floor of the exam room now, Scout crawling into his lap while Hazel whined softly until he scooped her gently into his arms. Their tiny bodies melted against him like they'd finally found a safe place, one they weren't planning to let go of. "You two are trouble," Travis murmured, giving Scout's ear a slow scratch. Scout's tail thumped in immediate agreement. Cole stood beside the counter, biting back a smile. "They're completely obsessed with you, man." Javi leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Pretty sure they've chosen their guy." "Chosen all of us," Travis corrected with a soft laugh. But secretly, he felt something blooming inside him. Something that hadn't stirred this deeply since his last combat tour. A sense of purpose. A sense of protection. A sense of home. Maybe the pups had saved him too. Outside the clinic, the world was changing quickly. News of Dwight Camden's arrest had exploded across Wyoming. State outlets picked up the story first, then national ones. Articles poured in, headlines, editorials, animal advocacy speeches, public outrage. Video clips of Hazel and Scout, wrapped in blankets and blinking under bright vet clinic lights, circulated online. They became symbols. Proof of resilience. Faces that moved strangers to tears. But the most striking transformation came from within Pine Hollow itself. Neighbors who had once whispered about the Marines with distant admiration now approached them outside the hardware store, at the feed co-op, even at the diner, offering gratitude, donations for the pups, and quiet words of respect. Travis didn't like attention. He'd spent a lifetime trying not to draw it. But this gratitude didn't feel like recognition, it felt like community. And that was different. Meanwhile, Sarah Camden was rebuilding her life from the ground up. After years living under Dwight's shadow, she returned to her childhood home on the northeast side of town, a quaint, aging white bungalow with a blue porch and windows that overlooked a wide, sloping hill. It was modest compared to the estate she'd just left, but it had warmth. It had memories. It had space to breathe. When she unlocked the door for the first time in years, she whispered, "It still smells like my mother's apple tea." Melanie Harper, now staying temporarily in one of the guest rooms, touched her arm gently. "It feels like a fresh start." Sarah nodded, eyes wet but not broken. For the first time in a decade, freedom felt real. The trial preparations intensified. Every day, Sheriff Denning, Prosecutor Carolyn Knox, and the Marines gathered in the sheriff's conference room to piece together Dwight's years of behind-the-scenes cruelty. The footage of Hazel and Scout was only part of it. Financial exploitation. Employee intimidation. Improper disposal of hazardous materials. And records of prior, missing animals stretching back years. Dwight's abuses hadn't been an isolated act. They were a pattern. "It's bigger than we thought," Carolyn said one afternoon, flipping through a stack of old employee reports. Ray nodded grimly. "He used fear like currency. And he thought it bought loyalty," Javi added, shaking his head. "That's the wild part." "It does," Travis said softly. "For a while. Until the right moment breaks it." They all knew what he meant. Sarah. Melanie. The pups. The evidence. It had taken all of it to snap Dwight's hold on Pine Hollow. A week after the hearing, Sheriff Denning gathered the trio outside the courthouse. "You boys should know," he said, tugging off his hat, "the Department of Justice is stepping in. They're making this a federal case." Cole blinked. "Animal cruelty going federal?" "Not just that," Ray said. "Fraud. Abuse of authority. Bribery. Threatening witnesses. It's a long list." Javi let out a low whistle. "Good. Guy deserves it." Ray looked them over, 3 Marines standing tall in the afternoon sun. "I've worn a badge a long time. Seen men rise and fall. But I've never seen a team walk into a situation this dark and drag the truth out into daylight the way you did." Travis shook his head. We didn't do it alone. Ray clapped him on the shoulder. No one ever does. That evening, the Marines returned to Dr. Beckett's clinic for their nightly visit. They didn't expect the surprise waiting inside. Scout and Hazel were sitting on the floor in the reception area, washed, brushed, and wearing tiny blue bandanas embroidered with their names. Hazel's leg had been upgraded to a sleeker, firmer brace that let her put weight on her paw again. Dr. Beckett grinned as the men entered. Well? What do you think? Javi practically melted. Oh my God, they look like little deputies. Cole crouched, rubbing both pups behind the ears. You two are ready for a magazine cover. Travis knelt last. Scout bounded directly into his chest. Hazel hobbled right behind him. Easy, sweetheart, Travis murmured, lifting Hazel and settling her gently into his arm. Her tiny tail wagged against his wrist. Dr. Beckett cleared her throat softly. They're ready to go home. The room fell still. Home. Cole echoed. With you three, she clarified. Paperwork is done. Judge signed off. Sheriff delivered the order himself. For a moment, none of the Marines moved. Then Javi inhaled sharply. Wait, we're officially their guardians. Dr. Beckett nodded. Congratulations. Hazel nuzzled under Travis's chin. Scout licked Cole's palm. Javi wiped his eyes dramatically. It didn't feel like adopting dogs. It felt like welcoming family. Later that night, the trio drove back to camp with both pups asleep on blankets beside them. The fire crackled gently as the stars stretched across the sky, bright and scattered like diamonds. The pups curled together between the men, fitting perfectly like they belonged. Travis looked at them for a long moment. Feels like they've been ours forever, he said quietly. Cole nodded. Some things don't need time to become true. Javi leaned back, arms behind his head. And we're gonna give these two the best damn life they've ever dreamed of. Hazel sighed softly in her sleep. Scout shifted closer to her. The Marines sat around the glowing fire, the forest humming peacefully around them, the worst finally behind them. But the story wasn't over. A new chapter was beginning, one built on healing, hope, and a bond forged in the unlikeliest of ways. Morning sunlight spilled through the tree canopy like molten gold, dappling the forest floor in a soft mosaic of light and shadow. A gentle breeze hummed between the tall pines, rustling branches overhead. It was peaceful, so peaceful that if someone had stumbled into the clearing without context, they would have never believed the chaos these woods had witnessed just days earlier. At the heart of the campsite, Hazel and Scout darted around playfully, their paws making faint prints in the fresh earth. Hazel still wore her supportive leg brace, but it didn't slow her down much. She hopped, wiggled, and shoved her nose into leaves, determined to inspect every new scent. Scout ran circles around her, almost like he was making sure nothing got too close. Javi sat on a log carving a small wooden figurine, two pups pressed side by side. Cole brewed coffee over a compact stove, humming a tune from some old Western soundtrack. And Travis watched the pups from a few feet away, leaning back against a tree stump, expression soft and distant. It felt like the first real morning of peace they'd had in weeks. Hard to believe all this started because the universe dropped two tiny furballs in our path, Cole said, handing Travis a mug. Travis smirked. They weren't dropped. They were buried. Javi winced. Dark humor, man. Accurate humor, Travis replied. From behind them, footsteps approached. Sheriff Ray Denning appeared through the trees, hat in hand, sunlight glinting off the silver insignia. He walked with the calm stride of someone who had accepted a long journey's end but still carried the weight of it in his shoulders. Morning, boys, Ray said. Hazel spotted him first and gave a high-pitched bark. Then Scout ran to greet him with rapid tail wags. Ray crouched and scratched both pups behind their ears. You two settling in just fine, he murmured. Good. You deserve every bit of it. The men shared a knowing glance. If anyone understood justice mixed with healing, it was Ray Denning. He straightened, his expression shifting into that firm sheriff tone. Got news, he said. Federal charges have been finalized. Dwight won't be seeing daylight for a long time. Javi let out a low whistle. How long are we talking? Multiple decades, Ray answered. He crossed lines the federal government doesn't forgive. Animal cruelty was just the opening thread. Fraud, witness intimidation, obstruction, he knitted himself a whole prison sentence. Cole crossed his arms. What about Sarah? She's cleared, Ray replied. Proved she never participated, never knew, and never enabled. She's working with social services now. Helping build preventative programs. Travis nodded slowly. Good. She deserves the chance. Ray's gaze softened the tiniest bit. All of you do. What you did, it's the kind of thing a community remembers. He handed Travis a manila envelope. From the judge. Travis opened it. Inside was a certificate, clean, official, beautifully framed, with their names listed as Hazel and Scout's legal guardians. Under it, a short letter read. Their lives now begin with you. Cole exhaled softly. Javi pressed a hand over his heart. Travis swallowed a lump he didn't expect. Thank you, he told Ray. The sheriff smiled. No, son. Thank you. He tipped his hat and walked away down the path, fading into the trees as quietly as he'd arrived. Later that afternoon, the trio decided to take the pups on their first real adventure, a small trail near the creek. Hazel trotted carefully beside Travis, who kept a protective hand hovering near her brace. Scout bounded ahead but always turned back every few steps to check on his sister. The trail opened into a sparkling stream, water clear as crystal, smooth stones gleaming beneath. The creek babbled gently, its sound weaving into the serenity of the forest. Cole tossed a pebble into the shallow water and grinned. Well? Who's going in first? Javi kicked off his boots. Them. Hazel sniffed nervously at the water's edge. Scout dipped a paw into the creek and jerked back, startled by the coolness. Then he tried again. And again. And then, suddenly, he stepped in fully, splashing Hazel accidentally. She let out a tiny offended squeak. The Marines burst into laughter. Soon Hazel followed, tentative at first, then with growing confidence as she realized the water held her weight gently, like a cushion. They waded, splashed, played, and soaked their fur under the warm sun. It didn't feel like recovery. It felt like rebirth. That evening, as dusk folded over the forest, the campfire crackled and popped. The smell of cedar smoke drifted lazily through the clearing. The pups curled together on a blanket beside the fire, exhausted from play, tiny chests rising and falling in unison. Javi poked at the fire. Hard to believe someone tried to snuff them out. Cole shook his head. Harder to believe how quick they bounced back. Travis stared into the flames. Sometimes animals heal faster than people, he said quietly. They don't overthink. They don't hold grudges. They just keep going. Javi nudged him lightly. Kind of like you. Travis didn't look up, but a faint smile tugged his mouth. Maybe. Cole leaned back, hands behind his head. So what's next for us? We staying out here? Heading back for deployment? What's the plan? Travis didn't answer immediately. He watched Hazel shift in her sleep, burying her nose beneath Scout's shoulder. Then he spoke. I think, for the first time in a long time, we actually get to choose. Javi blinked. Choose? Where we go? What we do? Who we protect, Travis said. These pups, they're family now. And family changes things. Cole nodded slowly. Yeah. Yeah, it does. They sat quietly for a while, listening to the crackling fire, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of night settling around them. Finally, Javi lifted his tin cup. To Hazel and Scout, he said softly. To survival. To new beginnings. Travis lifted his cup. Cole did the same. Firelight danced in their eyes. To second chances, Travis added. Their cups clinked. The two pups stirred at the sound, blinking sleepily before curling close again. Above them, stars shimmered, quiet witnesses to the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Hazel and Scout were no longer symbols of tragedy. They were proof of what compassion, courage, and relentless hope could build out of brokenness. They had found their heroes. And the Marines had found pieces of themselves they thought they lost. A new life waited beyond the ridge, one filled with laughter, loyalty, healing, and home. And as the firelight glowed warm against their fur, Hazel and Scout slept peacefully. Finally safe. Finally loved. Finally home.